Welcome back to Confront Your Mind. I'm Jolynn,
I'm Tiffany. Join us as we talk about how to confront the uncomfortable in life,
while also allowing space for laughter as we learn. Hello!
Welcome back.
Welcome back to Confront Your Mind.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next video.
Yes. Period. Today we're going to be talking about not obsessing over timelines and just timelines in general and how like life can look differently from the way we planned it and like how that can be good and bad sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And just the reality of that.
Yeah,
I can see
reality.
so much.
There's so much cat hair.
I can okay, I need to focus. So yeah, to start off with, we were just going to kind of introduce the fact that I feel like, in my opinion, or at least I do, like have almost like an imaginary timeline.
Yeah.
Where I never, it wasn't ever that I like sat down and like actually wrote out a timeline and was like, okay, at this year I'll be doing this. Like I know some people do that and they'll have a legit like real timeline. And I didn't even think about that when I was like typing this, but some people actually write out a time. Did you ever do that? I know I didn't.
I don't think I ever did.
But
I just had like this. I just had this idea in my head that I was like, okay, this is how my life is gonna go.
Same, and that's what I mean by like the imaginary timeline. It's like I didn't really put much thought into it, but it kind of just naturally happens, right? To where you're like, oh, at this age, this will be the way this looks. And I think like we either look at our parents, or we look at other people, or we look at like people, like characters we see, and we think that that's like reality when it's not.
It's not. Or like what society tells you about like how you should be, or like how much progress you've made, and that's just also a load of crap as well.
Definitely.
I think like when you get into your 20s, which is kind of like why we talked about it,
it hits hard.
Yeah, especially in your late 20s, you're like, oh, what am I doing? Like, what is going on here? Like,
yes,
I guess you kind of like get into that place where you're kind of getting into the groove of either having a job or like starting a long-term career, and that's a lot, and you're just like, oh, this is all falling into place, and that it's scary.
Yeah, no, it can be like overwhelming, and I feel like I definitely feel that the late 20s thing, it's like, because I'll be 28 in December, and like to me I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's like for some reason the closer I get to 30, like I feel like I have to have my whole life together.
Oh yeah,
like I'm like, if I'm 30 and there's things I still need to do, like my life is over.
I know.
And I don't know why I feel that way, but like there's something about that age that like it's telling me like, okay, well, like your 20s are to get everything in line, and if you're not there by the time you're 30, like that's it.
Screw you, I guess.
You're done.
You're done. You're finished. You're not picked.
Like, you did not take the opportunity you had,
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I see that too. I think like, I think thinking about like when I think back on my life and I think of like what I thought was old, I think like 30 has always stood out as like a really defining age to me, as like, oh, you're there. That is without a doubt, you're in adulthood. Like in your 20s, like, like, yeah, you're like kind of in your adulthood, but like when
you're 21, I think you're practically a child.
Yeah, exactly. I can't believe I started dating my husband at the time, like long-term seriously at 21. I'm like, are you okay? Like,
yeah.
Well, and like just because
I was like, gonna say that,
like because I was like a baby, like and I feel like now, like I turned 27 this year, and that's just crazy to think about too. Like that I've almost known my husband for like a decade.
Yeah.
Hello.
It's crazy,
but
it really is.
Yeah. So I'm turning 27 in like less than a month, and I'm just trying to pretend like it's not happening.
27 in my opinion feels a lot older than 26. Like I don't actually feel older, but it sounds a lot older to me.
Yeah, like when you're like, oh, you're 26, you're like, oh, young and flirty, and then you're like, when you're 27, it's like, oh, you need to have your shit together.
It's like whenever you're 26, I feel like it's still it gets close enough to 25 that you're like, oh, 25, like I'm basically still in my younger 20s.
Right.
But then 27, like it's inarguably like you're in your upper 20s.
Like without a doubt, like girl,
it's
you're turning 30.
It's called the late 20s. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, you're basically 30. Once you're 27, you're 30.
Yeah, just stop counting. Just stop counting. But no.
Yeah, that's the way that it feels.
Yeah.
And then the closer I get to turning 28, like, we are in May. Like, we're about halfway through May. And it's in December. But it's like,
I can't believe it.
and it's like I look at, like, my brother turns 30 in December.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have friends that are like in their 30s, and like to me, like I look at them and they don't seem old. But when it's me, like I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. My husband turns 30 this year, and he's
I always forget that.
Yeah, he's old. So old.
Which proves my point. Like it's like I don't feel like it actually is old,
Such
but
an old man.
in your head it is.
He's my old man. Yeah. I give him a really hard time. I'm like, how are your knees today?
I mean, I feel like every year I feel it in my joints more.
My back is really starting to get to me lately.
Yeah.
Can't go to the gym and like lift weights and without my back hurting the next day. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, but
Yeah, you did have that crick in your neck for a really
It's
long.
still
Yeah, I was
there.
gonna say, yep.
something.
It takes longer and longer to go away.
It does. That's the other thing with aging. I know we're not talking about aging today, but
But we are, I
but
guess.
kind of. The other thing with aging is like as I'm getting older, I'm noticing my body is taking more time to recover, and I'm like, what is going on?
It's like you pulled a
don't like this
muscle
at all.
4 weeks ago.
Right. Like if I was like in high school playing tennis, I would have like been recovered in 2 days. Like
Yeah. You're like, oh, I
Ridiculous.
pulled a muscle. By the weekend, it'll be all good. But
Right.
now it's like, remember that muscle I pulled like a couple weeks ago? It's still kind of bothering me.
I'm still icing it every morning.
Recently, Bradley told me that I looked like I was like 80 because I was like, I had, pulled some muscle in my neck or something. And so whenever I would like turn to look at something, I would like turn my whole body. And he was like, Tiffany, you look like you're 80 years old. And I was like, thank you. I know. That's the way I feel.
You're like, wow. It's so nice of you, husband.
He's such an
Come
encouragement.
here, baby. Let me give you a kiss for that one. That's funny, though.
But anyway, to get off of the aging topic, that kind of is easy to like get sucked
Yeah.
into.
was
But yeah,
good, though.
what in what way have your what did you think you would look like at 26?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, like,
26, almost 27. Like, what did you think?
Yeah.
What was your idea in your head when you were like 16 or
oh
something?
my gosh. When I was 16, definitely did not think, I don't know. I feel like at 16, I had like 2 different paths that I could have gone down. I could have become like married, white picket fence, like 5 kids by now. That was kind of like the idea that I was going for on one part of the scale. And then the other part of the scale was like city girl, doctor, like
Single.
making it in America kind of vibes. like single, like Louboutins on my feet.
So you were like hardcore, like this or this.
Like for me, like I think and that's one critique I get a lot from my family is that I am like very like all or nothing. Like I'm like one very far end of the spectrum or the very far other end of the spectrum.
I agree. I think
And
yeah.
so I think now I've found a way to like be a little bit more in the middle,
Definitely.
which is why I don't think I would have seen necessarily like where I'm at today. But like I had a feeling that I would be married by now. So
Yeah.
that's like one part of my timeline that did come true. I thought I was going to be an infectious disease doctor.
And you're not.
I didn't even get close to that one. I took like 2 organic chemistry classes and I was like, I'm out. I'm
Chemistry
good.
is I would say I would venture to say that chemistry is what keeps a lot of people from doing certain like jobs, which is ridiculous because I feel like a lot of times, well, I don't know about infectious disease, but there are things like with nursing, like we have to take chemistry and like we do not use it. Like I have never balanced a, what's it even called? Not balancing an equation, balancing.
I've blocked out that time in
Anyway,
my life.
I've never used chemistry in nursing whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, like we use
Yeah.
the only, like, like it's like we use like sodium chloride, we use like saline, but like,
Yeah.
like I don't have to know like what makes up like sodium, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we don't use it at all. And then we had to take a chemistry class, and it was kind of hard, and it was literally just like one of the most introductory level chemistries. So I can't imagine
crazy.
what the higher level chemistries are like.
Yeah. I wasn't like too bad at chemistry. It was when I got into organic chemistry, and I studied with really smart people.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember after one class, like I studied with the people that got like 99s and stuff on organic chemistry exams.
Those are bad people to study with.
I'm pretty sure all of those people are now at medical school, and done with medical school, starting residency now, or they just finished medical school.
Mm-hmm.
But like they're all like really successful. I'm also successful, just in a different way. But they're all like really successful in like the medical career that they wanted to go into. And
like they're gonna be doctors.
I was less sure of going into the medical field, especially when I got to college. I like flip-flopped back and forth a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, so when I was 16, I wanted to be an infectious disease doctor. When I was 18, I wanted to be a freelance journalist. So,
I know. Yeah. I knew you were going to talk about the journalism. Because I remember being like, whoa, that's different. Like, I mean, I was excited for you, but I was just like, oh, that's definitely like not the same route at all.
No. I was like, I'm going to do it. And then I didn't. So, and then I became a therapist.
Surprise.
Surprise. Which is honestly the best out of both of them for me.
Yeah.
But I remember, I think I was sitting outside of organic chemistry after one of those tests, and me and the group that I had studied with, they were all they had memorized the questions on the test somehow. And I was just sitting there staring at the floor because I was like, I bombed that test. I threw it in the grave and put dirt on it in the room. That thing is dead.
You just started writing random stuff.
Yeah. I remember taking it and being like, I don't know what's going on. And I wanted to cry.
Yeah.
And then one of the people in the group that we were in, he came out and he was like, hey, he was like, how'd you do? And I was like, I think I did okay. And he was like, what do you mean? That test was so easy. Do you not think you did well on it? And I was like, it was something along those lines.
People like that drive me insane.
And I was like, he was like, I think I aced it. And I was like, that's great. I was on the verge of tears. I think there were two other girls in that group, and one of the girls, she was like, hey, leave her alone, or something like that. And
so you were bullied.
No, the guy was really nice. He just was he was very hyper, and he obviously didn't know, that I was stupid. Because I was hanging with the best of them. But so they all got I think 96s and above on that test. I got a 65. So
and that's when you knew.
I quickly fell back after that.
You're like, so journalism.
Yeah, I was like, let's do something. I think psychology was the next step after that.
Yeah.
But no, I think it just goes to show, and not that's not the reason I changed my path too much, but it definitely had some sway in it. Well, I also was sitting there, I was like, I don't care about chemistry. My little sister,
you have to be passionate about,
right? Emmy, my little sister, she's really good at chemistry. Mm-hmm. She's so good that her professor wrote her a personal note on her test and was like, hey, if you are not considering a field in chemistry in the future, you should highly consider it because you're very talented. And I was like, see, that's who belongs in a chemistry room,
Yeah.
But she tries really hard too. Mm-hmm. She's very motivated in that way. She enjoys learning about chemistry, enjoys all the sciencey stuff. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I enjoy it in some degree, but I don't care, I think, as much as you would need to care if you're going to go into that field. Yeah. And so it was just kind of the point of college is taking those classes and learning how much am I willing to give in subjects that I don't really care about.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was organic chemistry. I got pretty far, but I got pretty far and then I had to turn around. I was like, yeah, no, I don't think I want to spend my life doing this. And not that I think you need that as a doctor so much, but more so, like, it just wasn't, I just think our timelines, like, it just wasn't a part of, like, my timeline. I
Yeah.
think, and I'm glad I took those courses, because so that way I did know for sure. I was like, definitely
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, that's a good point too, is sometimes you have to like prove something wrong. And it feels better instead of like never trying. It feels better to like not like try and fail necessarily, but like try and realize that like that's not what you want to put your efforts into and what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I passed the class. I passed my orgochemistry classes.
There you go.
I did good. Yeah, I guess he's get degrees, but I did pass it, and I ended up graduating with like a good GPA or whatever. But you know, I think just being able to like look back and be like, look at how much like I flip flopped. Like you know, like I think at 16, like at 16, I thought I was going to be an infectious disease doctor. I think in middle school, I thought I was going to be like, I don't know what I thought I was going to be in middle school. I think I thought I was going to be a stylist in middle school.
Yeah.
Like that's, you know, so like our timeline changes no matter where we're at in life.
That's true. And I feel like that's a really good point that you bring up, because I feel like as we get older, we feel like, you know, like the older you get, the more you feel like, you know, like you have to have it figured out.
Yeah.
And like I talk
like
about all the time how like I have no idea. I mean, I do know why I decided I wanted to be a nurse, but like I didn't really think about it. Like I didn't put that much thought into it.
Right.
Like that's something I wish I would have realized whenever I was younger, is like actually like thinking about the reality of the job.
Right.
Like I feel like especially nursing that's a whole nother topic. It's like very glamorized, and it's like, oh, go save people, like you know, like it's very glamorized, whereas like the actual job is like
not it.
Yeah, but
Especially like in like hospital settings too.
yeah. And you know, I think that like I think it's like made out to be like a like, you know, a very noble job. Like you help people, and it's not that I don't think it is, but it's like I think that I wish I would have like realized like how much it actually takes out of you. And like I shouldn't think about it in a well-rounded way of like, okay, like how much is it going to take out of me, and like how's it going to affect like my future like family, and like, you know, like, or even like in my like marriage, like, you know, it's like coming home like stressed. Like now I've been realizing since I like got out of working in the hospital that like whenever I come home, or like once I get off of work, I don't like talk about work. Whereas like when I worked in the hospital, like that's all I talked about, like for like a long time after I got off my shift. Like I just like needed to vent, and like it, you know, I brought it home and all this, and like it's just something that I shouldn't think about any of that, you know. But yeah, whenever I decided to become a nurse, like I just was like, yeah, that's what I'll do, sure. And I don't think I realized like how big of a deal like your job is, like how much of your life it becomes. I just thought like, oh yeah, like that's what I'll do to make a paycheck, like, and it'll be so fun. And I think like, you know, work seems like so like fun whenever you're like younger and you don't have a job. Like you look forward to like doing that, and then like once you're there, you're like, I don't want to work.
Yeah.
You
What
know?
what else do you think like plays into the timeline for you, like in that imaginary timeline?
I mean, kind of like what you said, like society. I think like society and like imitation, like seeing other people, like especially, I know we've talked about this, but like being in, like I thought I would have like a lot of kids, like or not even a lot, but like I thought I'd have kids like when I was like in my young 20s.
Yeah.
And I think that's because like also being in the South,
yeah, there's that cultural expectation in the South.
it's culture too. Yeah, like part of society is culture, and like you know, it's interesting because like most people that, you know, we went to high school with, like I'd say more have kids than don't, and have had them for or like on their like second, you know, child or whatever. But like what am I trying to say? Hannah, who's from Long Island, like we've talked about, like I've realized that like a lot of like none of her high school friends, not one, like has a child, and a lot of them like aren't married.
That's wild.
And so it's like, I don't know if a lot of them are married. No, I think, yeah, I don't know. I haven't kept up much with her friends, but yeah, like it's not normal it's not a cultural thing there to like get married right out of college and then have kids right when you get married.
Right.
Whereas here, like it definitely is.
Almost everyone that we went to school with is married or engaged.
Right.
now.
Yeah. And then a lot of them have kids. And so it does look very
That's
different.
crazy when you think about even geographically
Yes.
how it differs.
Yeah. Like people are in the United States, but it's like so different. But yeah, and I think that like over time too, like people are having children later and you know, like focusing more on their careers and stuff like that, and just more like on themselves. Like, you know how our generation is more like mental health focused.
Yeah.
And I was listening to a podcast the other day that was talking about, this girl was talking about how like she wanted to get her mental health like very like good before like, you know, having a child and stuff like that. So it's like things like that I don't think used to be a thing. I think it was just like, okay, I'm married now, I'm gonna have a
Right.
child, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just really interesting because I think that like just through imitation, like it's not even that I was like, oh, I want to like have a child when I'm 23 or 24. It was just that I saw other people doing that, and so I was like, oh, okay, like I guess me too, like that's what
Yeah.
I'll do. And it's just interesting because like I think for me a lot of my imaginary timeline was just like that life was going to happen to me and I was just going to accept it. Like wasn't even like I guess that's probably not a good thing, but it's like I wasn't even thinking of it as like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this. I was just like,
You just
oh, I guess
expected.
like that'll happen and that's fine, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that for me like changed the older I got, is that I've like, I guess that's a positive of it, is that like I'm realizing that like I can make a different decision, you know, than what's been laid out for me or like what was done that I watched.
Yeah, like you have to go after what you want and make those differences. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to like make things happen. Like things aren't just gonna like come to you. And yeah, like I think I just realized like the older I got that like you are in charge of your life and like you make your own decisions and you create your
Yeah.
reality. You don't just like sit around and like things just drop
Right.
into your lap.
And I think that going off the society timeline, like there is this like almost uncommunicated but expected like there's just like this like underlying expectation, I think, in like any society of like a timeline where there's like, okay, you're born, you like grow up and learn skills, like typically like until high school. That there is now an expectation in the United States to like go to college, and like you're in the minority. Literally, like you're in the minority if you don't go to college at 18, because everyone that's not 18 is like a non-traditional student, and which is crazy to me that that's even like a term, like that if you're not like 18 or like 18 to 25,
Yeah, like if you're like a freshman in college and you're older,
like 26, like you're considered a non-traditional student, and like that's like a term, like that's a like a label that you get slapped on you, which is just crazy how it's like there's like even like there's so much of an expectation that we have the need to label somebody that does not fit into that like
that is kind of
identity.
crazy.
And then on top of that, like, and like especially in the South, like you were saying, and that's like where we're from and like what we know. And so like after college, like there's this expectation that like in college you're supposed to meet somebody and get married, and then like once you're married, like there's
Immediately.
you're supposed to
Children.
like, yeah, like there's that expectation of like you're supposed to have children, and then you're supposed to raise children,
And
like,
then as soon as you can have your second child, like go ahead and have
Right.
another one. Like, you know, like
typically you
what are
want
you doing?
3.5 kids. 2.5 actually, I think, is what the US number is, but you want like 3 kids, and like then you raise the kids and dedicate your life to them, and then they all go to college, and then you and your husband work through life together as empty nesters, or wife, you know, but like your partner and you, but work through life together as empty nesters and try to find meaning in retirement, and then you die. Like that is the societal timeline.
Yeah, no, and it's,
Like it's
very
set out for you.
Yeah, it's very set out for you, and it's really interesting because that's something that me and my husband talk about a lot, is like, because he's very big on like not adapting to societal norms. That's like one of his largest like passions, is that like that's not what I'm gonna do. And you know, and so it's like that. Even, I mean, we talk about it with even like a much smaller timeline, such as like your week, like, you know, like you work Monday through Friday, And then
Yeah.
there's the weekend where you like have fun and relax, and then, you know, you just start over. And it's the like looking at a smaller timeline, you know, it's like there's a lot of like little timelines that are like set up for us, that it's like,
you can't
you
change
know,
the
this
big
is the way
timeline.
that it works. And it's like a lot of times like you don't have to like you don't have to go by that. And same with like, you know, we're talking about obviously like the bigger timeline of life and what you just said.
Yeah,
And
but
it's
I
like it
that you
doesn't.
brought in the little timelines too.
Yeah, and I think I realized that whenever like I was working in the hospital as a nurse, and like when I worked at Duke, I worked weekends for a little while, and it just like I realized that like I was like it felt weird that like, you know, I was like doing my grocery shopping and my hanging out at the pool on like Monday and Tuesday, and like you know, during the week, and then like on like Saturday night I was like at the hospital working, you know, like it's just very odd, because I was like, wow, I'm like doing the opposite of what everybody else is doing, but I kind of liked it. And I think that sometimes it feels really good to like go against the normal flow of things. And same thing with the life timeline. Like it's like, you know, once I got to be like 23 or 24, like I was like, wait, I don't want a kid right now. You know?
Yeah.
And like it was a funny feeling, because I remember being like,
You were married.
like I'm married, and we've been married for like a couple years, and or like a year or two or whatever. And like I was just like, like weird, I don't want kids.
Crazy.
Yeah, and it's like it makes you feel like you're different, or you're like outside of the normal, but it's like really you're just not like adapting to like exactly what's been laid out for you of like what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, because we take in those messages too, like even like in movies, like when we like hear our stories of like our parents and our grandparents, and like we take in these like, and what we see, we take in like these stories and we internalize them and we apply ourselves to them. Like it's a human it's just a very human behavior to like compare your story and like your timeline to other people's timelines.
And you think it should like match.
Exactly. And like there's people that like, you know, like, and even like, you know, I think military, like a lot of people in the military go straight out of high school, go to the military, and then they come back and they do college, and they're considered non-traditional students. And their timeline looks different from like a traditional student's timeline, but it just shows like that it doesn't really matter like what timeline you're following. Like it's what's important is like what is like yours. Like it's
like what do you want your life to look like?
Yeah, like because at the end of the day, like I think there's like what is it, like what's it called, like a blueprint, I guess. Like there's like a generic blueprint to every life that's like comes out, like you're born and like here's your blueprint with your life, like, you know. But I think it's really important to make sure that you're not just following this like subconscious blueprint that you've you've accepted and internalized, and making sure you're almost like pulling it out of yourself to create the timeline that you want to live. Because like you said, it's more about taking action and like being a part of your life rather than letting your life happen to you.
Yeah, exactly. And if you just go by the like societal timeline and you're not like thinking for yourself, and you're just thinking like, oh well, like I'm turning this age, and so that means that, you know, like I need to get married, or that means this, or that means that, then, you know, like you're just basically like going with what you've been told. But like, you know, you can be in charge and like think for yourself and say like, well, you know, like maybe you come out of college and you're like, I don't want to be married. Like it's not what I want right now.
Yeah.
Then don't get married, because like it's not gonna go well if it's not what you want.
I'm gonna get married even though I don't want to.
Yeah, like then guess what? You're probably gonna end up not married like, soon after.
But if your timeline involves a divorce, so like maybe that's the route you should go.
If that's what you want.
Yeah.
I would like to get married and then divorced. but yeah, so I mean, I think just like the importance of you know, like living in the moment is also really important in the way of just like, you know, having what you have now and focusing on that, and not focusing so much on like, you know, what you're going to be doing next year, or like what your life's going to look like in a few years, because that's something also that me and my husband have been working on, is like, because, you know, we've talked about like whether we're going to stay in this house that we bought, or whether we're going to try to sell it and move like somewhere else. And like, you know, we've recently like been like, you know, we really don't know like what our life is going to look like in a couple of years from now. So like, you know, instead of trying to be like, know what's going to happen, like we've been working on just kind of letting that go and just being like, you know, we really don't know like where we're going to live. We might live in a different city. We might live right here where we live.
Right.
So let's not try to like figure it out right now, because there's to an extent you can't.
No, yeah. I think that's like a really important part to remember about like these imaginary timelines, like you said, is that they're imaginary.
That's like all they are. Yeah,
that's all they are. Like the blueprint I was talking about when you're like at birth, like it doesn't actually exist. You know, there's not actually a blueprint. It's like you get to decide it, but also part of deciding it is like letting yourself enjoy your life and be present and live in the moment. Like yes, like there's going to be things that you wanted to do in life that you didn't get to do. Like there's going to be people that you wanted to have in your life that aren't a part of your life anymore. There's going to be things that you wanted to see that you haven't been able to see.
Yeah.
You know?
But there's also going to be like opportunities that you didn't see coming.
Exactly.
That you have no idea about that are going to come like a year from now, you know? And like, so you can't plan that because you don't know about it.
Like we were talking, preparing for this podcast, preparing for the podcast. And I was talking to Tiffany, I was like, you know, I never would have thought, like if you would have told me, well, maybe not a year ago, because we're coming up on a year actually of the podcast, but like 2 years ago, if you would have told me that me and you would have started like a podcast, I would have been like, that's stupid. There's no way.
You'd be like, no, we won't.
No, that's stupid. Get out of here. And like, but we're here. And like, that's the cool part too, is that like timelines, even if you have like these ideas of what you want to accomplish, which is great to have goals, it's also important to make room for things that are unexpected. And like, because it's also allowed me and you to get closer, which is like something we've talked about, we cherish. I feel like, you know, I've also grown as a person a lot, not just from the podcast, but like, you know, through unexpected events, growth happens. That's why true. Timelines should be somewhat imaginary.
Yeah, like leave them to the imagination and don't try to like make them a reality.
Yeah, be present, live in the moment as much as you can. I know sometimes
it's difficult.
Us little anxious babies have a hard time with that, but
yeah, but it's something to always like work towards.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's a wrap. Let's wrap it up. All right. Thank you so much for listening.
Yes, and
what is the next part? Oh gosh. Remember that we're all learning.
And don't be afraid to get confrontational this week.
Keep it cute until we meet again.
Thank you for watching.
Bye.